So, good afternoon, everybody here. It's great to be with you here in Amsterdam. It's my pleasure. And as you already heard, I will share with you and take you with me on the journey what UBS is currently doing in terms of experience management and how we evolve and develop our platform and our capabilities. There's one thing to be said. What we're doing is always in the framework of a highly regulated industry. And this makes things not simpler. And you will see that, and you might already know, that therefore the approach that we have to take in the banking area is slightly different from what you would see, let's say, from the consumer goods industry. And we took the title that comes from Harvard Business Review, why is marketing too important to be left to the marketeers only? And that's the question I will try to answer for you during this session. Let's start quickly with who are we and what are we doing? So basically, I'm working in a truly global shop. You heard already, UBS is a global firm. We are acting in about more than 50 markets, 5 divisions, from institutional to private clients in Switzerland. And we are a global shop that is serving marketing and communications across the globe with everybody they need. So basically, from the technology framework over the services in terms of content management, down to providing frameworks, analytics, and so on. And last but not least, we do have in this shop one team which is basically responsible to build and maintain all the marketing cloud infrastructure. So this service is kind of run on behalf of all the markets, all the divisions, with one very simple goal. We will help the business to run client acquisition, client retention, and support all the strategic initiatives that we are doing. So when looking at the big picture from a kind of a general or central point of view, you will see that we have basically all the services under one hood. This is great. That's one of the achievements over the last couple of years, that we have brought together a highly fragmented landscape into kind of one central shop. So we have not only the content management and content creation in our hands, but we have as well all the analytics and platform-related functions so that we can play out whatever the message is across all the different channels. Now, when I started a couple of years back, the platform team was looking like that. You see silos. You see silos around external, internal audiences. You see silos around marketing automation. At that time, it was still called campaign. And you see silos around advertising and social media. That was the core of the shop when we built the technical capabilities. I will tell in a second how it came to that. And this shop was the starting point for a really kind of highly dynamic journey over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's work in progress. Now, when we started, you can look at it like a maturity curve. So at the beginning, we had marketing was no strategic utility. It was not perceived as a really truly strategic function, mainly not marketing digital technology. So we had mushrooming. We had a very kind of scattered landscape, many tools, legacy tools. That's where we started. And then we started to integrate towards a central core. One of the first things was that we integrated a variety of intranet appliances into one system. That was a starting point to build the nucleus for this kind of truly global shared service organization. But it was only a starting point. After that, we started in 2011 integrating ubs.com, so the client-facing platform. We brought it onto the Adobe Marketing Cloud stack, mainly at that time AEM, and analytics. And we started integrating and evolving. We brought into place more technologies, campaign came to that, and at the same time, we said, okay, now we have a central function, we have central technology, so make sure that we go with a central setup when it comes to vendors and how we work together with third parties. That all was brought in place until this year. And when I'm now looking forward, what the things are that are on the roadmap, there are many, many points around client experience. How can we really achieve a truly integrated client experience, which is first class and which is really kind of tied to the needs of the different audiences that we face. We will create data integration layers just to make sure that we can access the data. We heard that in one of the keynotes before, how important it is to integrate data across business and marketing systems. And for sure, last but not least, we will leverage the organization in terms of skills, in terms of roles, and in terms of operating model. So when looking at capabilities, platform, and mainly organization, you see a steep development over the last couple of years. And this will really continue. We're not yet at an end point. It's kind of an ongoing story. If we look at the landscape from a platform, a channel point of view, we started, as I said, with Experience Manager, for sure together with analytics. So that was the first kind of value proposition that we had. We later on started integrating Audience Manager and Target just to make the experience more tied to the individual, mainly on websites. That's what we started with. And only over time, we started integrating further platforms and further channels. Social was one. And one of the most important developments in the last 2.5 years was to bring campaign into place. With campaign, we started as an email marketing silo, you could call it. It was just thought to replace a couple of legacy systems. And within these 2.5 years, things fundamentally changed. And we figured out that campaign will be one of the core elements of this integrated marketing automation layer. So campaign became from a little satellite to one of the core bits of the whole landscape. But it's not the end. Again, what we're doing is integrating with third-party platforms as well, mainly around advertising, for instance, and I would say for us, this is the moment of truth. We're starting slowly but surely to integrate with business data, CRM tools, banking platforms, just to make sure that these pieces do not break apart. That's kind of what we have in place as of now. Now, that's kind of the technology stack. And if you're looking now into the organization, we see, and this is not only true for marketing, we see that the world was starting in silos, and when looking at IT and technology, you very often had one kind of corporate IT or technology function. And the silos were independent, they could work. That's like the divisions in our case, or it's the different markets. So there was no big need to really integrate between the different functions. And when looking just from an ideal, typical point of view into today's world, it's far more complex. What we've seen, and campaign is one of the excellent examples, there is change, there is run, and in between, there is a huge area, you could call it the 50 shades of gray of marketing automation. That's the area where neither the typical run nor the typical change is really governing the procedures. It's configuring, adapting, learning, improving, and it falls a little bit into nowhere. And that's what we had to learn. How do we deal with these highly technical, highly specialized functions that we need? And there was no kind of, we had no image about that, no learning about that. We really had to figure out how we build the functions up. At the same time, we see that technology alone is not enough. I showed you the picture. We started with a technology-driven going-in position. And what we had to learn is that we have to bring a strong framework of services around the technology to enable the business users to really take benefit of the technology once it's in place. And last but not least, for sure, the IT function changed dramatically, and it comes further into the typical before so-called business functions, whereas typical business functions get deeper into this change process involved. So we had to draw new lines, more open lines. And one point is around governance. Governance is one of the core topics. Governance is about coordinating, focusing, putting the resources into the right place, making sure that we're all working against a common goal. And that's what is meant with governance here. That's a new kind of category, cross silos, cross channels, which was not in place before. Now, when looking into our shop, our technology shop, you see, we came from this world as it was yesterday, and we felt like, hey, now we have technology in place, but we need to enable the business to work with this technology. It's not only the shared service in terms of delivering some of the elements, it's as well educating, training, leveraging the capabilities. That's what I would call acting constantly as a change agent on behalf of the entire organization. Not only when it comes to further developing technology, not only when it comes to further developing our own shop and our own skills, it's mainly focusing on our business partners, helping them to grow and to adapt. And as you can imagine, being an old, established organization, which for sure is in constant change, but having established procedures in the area of marketing, of communications, of how we deliver content to our clients and our different target groups, it's quite hard to bring the momentum into the organization, to help them to really adapt to the new capabilities that we have. And for sure, marketing these days is no longer the same as it was a couple of years ago. And what we need, and that's one of the cultural things that we clearly see, one of the challenges I would call it, that's that we have to work together cross-silo far more, not only on the governance level, not only when it comes to kind of shared services and technology, it's mainly about people that are working with other people and that it becomes very natural that they are working across silos. When you look at that, you see clearly we have a growing complexity in all areas. Technology, organization, the way how we work together, the world around us with all the channels is getting more complex, and what this requires is basically we have to have a proper project management approach in place, because otherwise we cannot handle this growing complexity. And the learning for us here is that we need to have a very precise understanding of what the roles are, what the responsibilities are, and for sure, making sure that we have toll gates in place, and even if it's a tiny bit, we would set it up like a project, just to make sure right stakeholders are involved, right questions are asked, integration is well thought through, you know, might be 2 bits ahead, not just for the thing we're doing today. Change and run are properly aligned, so getting into an agile project management approach is very crucial for us, and this is kind of a major cultural change we're driving to drive. Now, again, our shop, if you look at it, it becomes a little bit more elaborate and a little bit more complex. So we have the technology line, the horizontal, we have the business view, the vertical, and basically everything was in place, but how the pieces were working together, that's kind of new. So we have the one contact to the business. That's the good news. We already have people that are working as account managers on our behalf as the comms functions to make sure that the business partners get a strong counterpart to develop their client experience. On the other hand, we have the technology, which now needs to be far more aligned in between the silos, and it's not absolutely true. Not everything was in place. There is one thing which came into that picture, and that's basically what we call the solution advisors. It's that level of advisory that we bring to our business partners, where we have people which are capable to understand the technologies, how they are interlinked, what the options, what the opportunities are, and help our digital advisors to really build a compelling omni-channel client experience. And this new bit is highly crucial to us because we learned one thing, and it's evident. We don't have enough people that can handle the technology and understand all the details that need to be understood in order to really build the client experience. And that's why we said we have to have people that are closer to the technology and they can consult and drive the potential of the technology into the business organization. And that led to this matrix, and the matrix clearly shows, and it's evident, it's complex to manage it. That's why we have to have a clear project management-driven approach. So that's where we are as of today. Now, let's look a little bit forward. One of the buzzwords is 360-degree client view. In our case, this means mainly two things. Integrating business data and marketing data. And as you can imagine, for a regulated industry, it's not that easy to bring that together, and mainly not if the cloud is involved. So there's a lot of change process. We have to convince people that you can bring the data together in order to get out the most of what we have in place. It's CRM data, it's banking data. On the other hand, and that's still work in progress, that's creating the proper plumbing in the background so that all our marketing platforms are properly integrated and aligned. That's not yet there. And it's absolutely important because if we want to integrate with business systems, we need to understand at least how our world works together and how our platforms shall be integrated. So it's all about designing a blueprint, how this, you could call it the client, the technology of the client experience framework should be interacting with each other. Then we have, for sure, the cultural topic, which is, for sure, you need skills, for sure you need people that work together with others across silos. That's all clear, but I think the culture is more about the constant learning, creating learning loops, improving, testing, being able to say, sorry, didn't hit the nail at all, so maybe we tried in a different way. It's agility, not only when it comes to project management, but it's agility when it comes to how we look at things and how we further develop procedures and campaigns, client experience at the end. There is one topic which you might not have thought that it comes up here when talking about client experience, and that's basically the person, the client, herself or himself. If you're working in an online digital business, normally you have a typical CRM structure where you have one person, one profile, one contact information, and then a bundle of information associated to that. What we see here is something different. In banking, we typically think and work in terms of accounts. So one account might consist of a bunch of different people in different roles, but there is no layer which gives us direct access to the people. And if I want to do targeted marketing or marketing automation, I need to know the heads, the people. And that's one of the, I would say, most important projects we're working on these days to make sure that we get a data lake where we have this one person, one profile situation. And that's a long walk to go because we have a series of legacy core systems and we need to bridge the gap between this account view and the client-centric view. For us, this is crucial because this at the end will help us to leverage what we are doing. And Last but not least, one of the points for this next year is GDPR, and you all know that. We are a Swiss bank, nevertheless, we have to adapt fully and comply fully. So that's one of the good examples where we can show, hey, this integration that we did, decentralization that we did over the last couple of years, in terms of tooling and in terms of services around, that's key for us to have that in place. Otherwise, we never could be compliant, nor could the client experience at the end be consistent. And with client experience, I seriously mean things like the disclaimer you have in place. How does it interact with the client? How are we transparent and at the same time not destroying the user experience? So these are very important points that we now can drive in a very kind of strategic and centralized manner. Last but not least, let me share a couple of the lessons learned, and there are many. So just focusing on 2 or 3. Regulated industry means we have huge functions in terms of risk and compliance. And we learned that digital marketing is kind of a completely new type of animal. We have to do a lot of education and training and try to convince the control functions why in our area some things are slightly different than in a core banking system, even if it's sometimes the same data. And it's a long road to get things compliant and approved. And for us, it took us around 2 years just to make sure that Campaign, which was the first platform to handle client identifying data, was approved as being compliant. The nice thing is, Campaign in our area is the first truly global cross-divisional platform that can hold client identifying data. So it was a huge step for our organization as well to get from a non-client identifying data into a client identifying world. And that means we have to have all the procedures in place, all the security barriers, everything you need in order to properly handle that data. Another topic is technology is not enough. And when looking into what will come next, then it's kind of letting the technology behind us as a fundament that is there and build on that foundation the kind of daily client experience. What I mean with that is, these days we are still into plumbing and getting things connected the right way. In tomorrow's world, I'm quite sure technology will step back a little bit and we can more focus on the daily business. And this infrastructure that we are building into the environment of the Adobe Marketing Cloud, that's exactly the backbone to do that next step. A typical situation when it comes to doing change in a big organization, it's not so easy to find the right incentives, because normally people are get incentives for getting things done in their silo. So the change that we are seeing here is at the same time focusing a little bit more onto how can we help people understand that the contribution in the different areas, in the different projects across silos is exactly at the same level of relevance as what they are doing within the silo. So that's one of the cultural topics we are tackling as well. And I mentioned that before, once Campaign came into place, we immediately felt that technology is not enough. And with Campaign, we had the first mover, you could call that, where we learned, and we learned hard, that we need to bring in place a lot of surrounding services, from the way, the operating model, how we want to deal with our business partners, down to the legal framework that needs to be in place, and for sure, leveraging the roles and the capabilities, the know-how in the business, so that we can operate these platforms. And we learned that it's a different world if you want to automate in a very industrialized manner, rather than just doing the typical copy-pasting which you start with. It's nice to start with copy-pasting and then using a target to split the audience. That's really fine. But what we've seen is that if you want to scale that up and really bring it into a global context, then you need far more in terms of technology and procedures. So to stop with that, I think it's a very clear situation. If we want to leverage the organization and help the organization do the next step in terms of digital marketing maturity, then we cannot leave it with the marketeers only. We have to come up with a compelling, comprehensive setup that integrates from the core business functions down to the analytics functions, from the front-end related topics to the back-end related topics, and without that, we just won't succeed. Thank you very much.